Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the Razer Blade Stealth, which is a thin and light laptop from Razer, a company that's probably best known for making gaming accessories and gaming laptops. This isn't a gaming laptop, though. It's a thin and light, ultra-portable machine that has sort of a premium design finish and some premium elements. And if you want to use it for gaming, you can, but really what you would probably do in that situation is plug in an external graphics docking station to the Thunderbolt 3 port. So that allows you to use desktop-class graphics cards. Out of the box, it doesn't actually have a discrete GPU. It just has Intel HD graphics. It sells for about $14.99 and up, and so what makes it worth considering if it's not a gaming machine and it comes from a gaming company? Well, it is one of the thinner and lighter laptops you're likely to find. It weighs about 2.9 pounds and measures about 0.5 inches thick, about half an inch thick. It's portable, it's got an all-aluminum case, it has a high-quality display, an interesting customizable keyboard lighting system, and you might notice, it's a little bit hard to pick up on the camera in this lighting, but you might notice that the keys are actually changing color as I talk. You can customize how it does that, whether it does that, and also sort of set it up so that different keys are different colors depending on your needs. So overall, it's a pretty nice laptop, but it sells for $14.99 and up with some top-tier specs for an ultra-portable, not necessarily for a gaming machine. So for instance, every version comes with the same 3200 by 1800 pixel touchscreen IGZO display with strong viewing angles. Very sharp, very crisp, very clear, has 100% sRGB color gamut, and it looks great except for the fact that you do get a little bit of glare if you point it at a window or a bright light source. Every version also has an Intel Core i7 processor. The model that I'm using here is the most recent version with a Core i7-8550 quad-core processor. That's a 15-watt processor, but it does offer better performance than previous Core i7 15-watt U-series processors because it is quad-core. And it has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Again, all versions of the Razer Blade Stealth come with 16 gigs of RAM. So those are some of the reasons why it's so high priced. The entry-level model does have 256 gigabytes of solid-state storage. This version is actually $200 more. It was loaned to me by Razer for purposes of this review, and it has 512 gigabytes of storage. It's a little bit tricky to upgrade the storage because we've got just hex screws on the bottom instead of Phillips head, so you might need a special screwdriver to open up the case. But, you know, you might be able to find a cheaper option on storage if you want to save a few bucks. The display, as I mentioned, is sort of one of the hallmark features of this laptop, so let's take a quick look at the screen. I'm firing up a little YouTube video here. Let's go ahead and mute that and skip. So again, viewing angles are pretty good, whether you're looking at videos, photos, games, anything else. It's very sharp, and everything's sort of crisp and clear and pretty attractive. There's a little bit of a mixed blessing, though, when you're using a high-resolution screen like that, which is, while you do get to view a lot of content on the page, you're probably going to want to use a high pixel density setup. So this is set at 200% scaling so that things don't look too tiny. Unfortunately, not all applications recognize Windows scaling. So here we are in 2018, and some applications like the image editing program GIMP still have these really tiny icons over here on the side that makes it a little bit difficult to edit pictures and do other things. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop a picture in here. That's 700 pixels across that little white section there. You can see how small a portion of the screen it takes up. It would look more like this on a typical notebook with, say, a 1600 by 900 pixel display, or maybe on a 1920 by 1080, it would be somewhere in between. So, you know, it can be a little bit hard to work with. Now, there's some workarounds. So, for example, with GIMP, I was able to find a third-party theme with larger icons. Looks a little bit more cartoonish to me, but if you wanted to, you could just go ahead and load those icons and make GIMP a little bit easier to use. But first, you need to actually open the program. So, you know, again, it's a little bit easier to see what you're doing here. Now, one thing you might have noticed is, as I mentioned, we've got a touchscreen display, and I can sort of click and open and move around. As I do that, the screen wobbles a little bit, which is a little disappointing, I think, on a laptop in this price range. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the build quality of the Razer Blade Stealth. It has a aluminum chassis. It's got pretty sturdy feel. There's a little bit of give, I think, on the lid, which is kind of strange. You can press in But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. And I should also point out here that the logo glows when it's on, or you can disable that if you don't want to use it, and it doesn't glow when the laptop is off. So the screen wobbles a little disappointing, but it's nice to have the option to use the touchscreen display if that's something that you want to do. The other real sort of hallmark feature of this, I think, is the keyboard. Although one thing I should point out is we've also got the laptop speakers here upward facing right on the sides. Some of the loudest laptop speakers that I've heard and pretty clear. Not a lot of bass, as you would expect from a laptop in this size. There's not really a lot of room for very bass heavy speakers, but it gets pretty loud, it gets pretty clear. I like the arrangement of the speakers on the side. So the keyboard though, again, as we look here, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the camera angle so we can get a better view. The colors look a little bit more vibrant in person than they do on camera. Actually, they look a lot more vibrant in person. I think it's just an artifact of the lighting in this room. But let's go ahead and get that camera in focus here, and I'll show you some of the things that you can do to customize the lighting effects. So right now it's doing something called spectrum lighting, which means that there's sort of a slow change from one color to another. We can also go to breathing, where it's more sort of quickly changes in sort of breathe in, breathe out. There's a fire option, which goes through sort of reds and oranges and yellows. Reactive, which is an interesting option here, where keys sort of light as you press them. And in that vein, there's also an interesting wave, or actually no, wave is just sort of the crazy looking one. And ripple, which I think is pretty self-explanatory there. So these effects are interesting, they're not necessarily useful, and they've kind of a battery drain. So you can turn them off and go to static, or just turn off the backlight keyboard altogether if you prefer not to use it. In static, you can choose from a number of different colors. Right now I've got it set to blue. I can go to red, green, and so on. So you can sort of find whatever is comfortable for you. You can adjust the brightness and other settings. And again, it doesn't always come across that well on the camera, but it's a pretty neat option to have. But what's even more useful is if you go into the Chroma configurator, which gives you the option to do things like choose from different templates. So say you're playing a first-person shooter video game. Now you can see that the W, A, S, and D keys are highlighted a different color. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are a different color. And that sort of when you're playing a game, those are the keys that you might need to hit, and it allows you to very quickly find them when you glance down. So that's first-person shooter. There's a different layout for real-time strategy games. Massively multiplayer online games. And so forth. Or you can just sort of set your own custom arrangement. So if you were using this not for necessarily gaming, but maybe editing videos or doing other things where there's certain key combinations that you use on a regular basis, you have that option of setting them as different colors to remind you which ones are the ones that you want for keyboard shortcuts and so on. For the most part, when I've been testing this, I've been testing it just with static color. And part of the reason for that is, as I mentioned, it takes a little bit of a toll on battery life if you use any of the custom effects. And this laptop really gets, let's say, less than perfect battery life. The estimate that I heard from Razer is that you should be able to get up to 9 hours. I've been getting closer to 5, and that's probably the most disappointing thing about this laptop. If you're going to spend $1,500 or more on a notebook because it's thin and light and versatile and something that you can take with you on the go, you might, if you're going to be using it for more than 5 hours, also want to carry along the charging cable. Now, it's a nice charging cable. It charges via USB Type-C. We've got this sort of braided cable connector here, which feels a little bit sturdier, less prone to getting tangled up and breaking. But you know, I think it's nice to be able to leave this sort of thing at home. And I'm not talking about you getting 5 hours of battery life when playing video games or doing other really CPU intensive tasks. I'm talking about general web surfing, document editing, writing blog posts for Liliputing and so forth. Only about 5 hours, which is pretty disappointing, and something that I've seen other reviewers have struggled with as well. So with a 53 watt-hour battery, it would be nice if you get a little bit more than that. Razer does sell an optional external battery pack that you'll plug into the USB Type-C port, that Thunderbolt 3 port, and you can charge the laptop using the external battery pack. There are cheaper battery packs that might be compatible as well. So if you need extra battery life, and you're going places where you can't necessarily plug in an adapter, you do have that option. But 5 hours right out the gate on launch day, it's a little bit disappointing. And that's one of the things that makes me wonder, do you need the custom keyboard lighting? Do you need the high resolution display? Because I get the feeling that if this were available with, say, a 1080p screen, if it were available with 8 gigs of RAM, if it were available without the custom backlit keyboard, there might be the possibility that you could get a little bit of extra battery life out of it, and probably spend less money. That's something that Dell offers with its XPS 13 thin and light laptops. Those are machines that are available with a 1080p screen or a higher resolution screen, and you can decide, do I want the higher resolution or do I want the longer battery life? That's not an option here because this is pretty much just first and foremost a premium design machine, and with that premium design comes shorter battery life. So that overall is a quick look at what you can do with the Razer Blade Stealth laptop. I have also got more details at liliputing.com, including performance with Linux, runs Ubuntu pretty well out of the box, and some other information. So again, if we take a look at the lid, you'll see that the logo dims down. And if we want to take a quick look at the case, pretty thin here, about 1/2 inch thick, full-size HDMI, USB headset, Thunderbolt 3, and on the bottom we've got ventilation and sort of these little rubber bumpers. Uses hex screws, so you need a special screwdriver if you wanted to open up and replace the built-in storage. Ships standard with 16 gigs of RAM and a Core i7 processor, but the storage, it's available with 256 to 1 terabyte of solid-state storage. The more you get, the more you spend. So if you wanted to upgrade to storage, more storage yourself, it might be a little bit cheaper to buy a third party, but you will need that special screwdriver. So again, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, taking a look at the Razer Blade Stealth laptop. You can find more notes on gaming, Linux performance, general usage, and other details at liliputing.com. And this is available from Razer and Amazon and other retailers for about $1,500 and up. There is a less expensive model, but it has a dual-core 7th generation processor instead of a 8th generation Intel Core processor with quad-core CPU.